Bill Rabinowitz of the Dispatch joins us. Bill, when do you head down to the Lone Star State?
Tomorrow afternoon, Matt.
Beautiful. Looking forward to this. Will be your third trip to AT&T Stadium, right?
Yeah. 2014, obviously, for the Oregon game, and last year's Cotton Bowl, and this one. So, some big games there.
All right. I was not at interviews last night. Lori Schmidt was from our station, and I listened to the raw audio of Dwayne Haskins' interview, and it's a kid that seems pretty unflappable, and I think it was you at one point that said, does anything rile you up? And he talked about his dogs and having to pick up dog poop. That is the only thing that gets to him. But you talk about a quintessential, Joe Cool type attitude that you want, or maybe Dwayne Cool at a quarterback. This kid, and now we'll see Saturday night, it's going to be more vicious bullets flying at him, but he seems like he has that right demeanor, does he not to you?
Yeah, he does. And, again, like you said, Matt, tomorrow or Saturday is going to be the big test because he's not facing Oregon State. He's not facing Rutgers. He's not going to have all the time in the world to throw. He's going to have to be efficient. He's got to be smart and make quick decisions. So far, so good, no question. He's been outstanding. But TCU with Gary Patterson, he's known for coming up with wrinkles. I mean, there's shades of Virginia Tech in this game. It's not exactly the same thing, but you remember that game 4 years ago when you had inexperienced quarterback and defensive coordinator threw the wrinkles at him. In Virginia Tech's case, the Bear defense, which they're not going to. I don't think you're going to see that from TCU. But Gary Patterson's known for coming up with ways to counteract those explosive Big 12 offenses. So. It's going to be interesting, and obviously Ohio State doesn't have Urban Meyer there, so it's incumbent on Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson to make those adjustments on the fly.
How difficult do you think this game is for Urban to miss?
I think Nick Bosa said it well. I think he said something like he knows he's going to be tearing his hair out on Saturday night. Because, as much as he wanted to be out there on the opener and against Rutgers last week, I think he knew that you or I could probably coach Ohio State to wins in those games. But this is the game that it's not a toss-up necessarily. Ohio State's a 12-point favorite, but it's a tough game. And I know Urban Meyer would love to kind of match wits with Gary Patterson, and he's not going to be able to do that.
You have 7 Buckeyes on the roster that are from the state of Texas, and 5 of them, Bill, are going to be legitimate, like, starters and or major contributors coming up on Saturday. I think about a kid like J.K. Dobbins, who has been kind of in the background the first couple of games. Mike Weber had the first big game, and then, the quarterbacks did their thing against Rutgers. What do you suppose is going through, like, that kid's mind? All these kids from Texas' mind, I know you got to talk to him this week. Is this game hold any more meaning to them than maybe any other non-conference type of game?
Yeah, of course it does. I mean, when you go back to your home state, you always want to show the people who question, why'd you go to Ohio State? Why'd you go to the Midwest? Why didn't you stay here? You want to show, this is why I went to Ohio State. I wanted to play at Ohio State. This is why I wanted to play here, and I'm good enough to play here. And obviously a lot of those guys, Dobbins has already proven that. I mean, Demetrius Knox, it's a big game for him. Jeffrey Okudah, it's a big game for him. I mean, Ohio State's done very, very well recruiting Texas, and I'm sure that TCU would love to have some of those guys on their team this weekend.
Visiting with Bill Rabinowitz of the Dispatch, Buckeyes and TCU coming up on Saturday night at 8 o'clock kickoff. It's on ABC 6. Flipping to the defensive side of the ball, and you mentioned Nick Bosa and his comments. I'm just wondering, Bill, what kind of a game, like I was saying to Campy earlier, I would not be surprised if this game turns into a shootout. Now, I don't think 61-58 type of shootout like we see in some Big 12 games, but Ohio State did give up 31 points to Oregon State. Did they solve things last week, or was it just Rutgers not having as explosive athletes? I don't know, but what kind of a game could you see TCU with some of their speed and offensive skill causing some problems for this defense?
Yeah, I do. I do think it'll be an offensive game. I think partly because the teams go so fast on offense, you're going to have a lot of possessions. Neither one of these teams is the type that's going to take 8 minutes for a drive. So when you've got 3-minute possessions, you're going to have a lot of them, and you're going to have a lot of chances to score. So even if the defenses play well, you can still give up 30 points just because of the sheer number of possessions. I do think Ohio State just has more talent top to bottom. I just think TCU, they're a very good program, but they don't have top to bottom the roster that Ohio State has. Ohio State's recruiting classes have been, top 5 pretty much every year. TCU's has been good, but not great. I mean, they're very good at developing players. Patterson's a great coach. This is a very good team. But I don't think they're quite at the level that Oklahoma was the last 2 years. And, their quarterback, Sean Robinson, is talented, but he's not Baker Mayfield. And so I would expect Ohio State to win this game, but I do think it's going to be an interesting game, a fun game. Maybe not a fun game for writers like me on Deadline.
Yeah.
But for fans watching at home, I think it's going to be a fun game.
It's been fun to watch Nick Bosa, and I'm just going to ask you, the wide open question here, Bill. When you watch him play, what jumps out at you the most? Because he's been a wrecking ball so far this year, which he had a lot of hype coming into this year, and he has lived up to that and then some. Again, It's just Rutgers and Oregon State. But what impresses you most when you watch him play?
I think that just how consistently he gets to the backfield. Most guys, you notice, maybe every third play, every fourth, fifth play, and that's good for a defensive end if you can do that. With him, it's almost every play. And you go, and he's getting extra attention, he's getting chip blocked, he's getting double teamed, all that stuff. And it's hard to do that on Ohio State team because you have Chase Young on the other side, Jonathan Cooper, Draymond Jones. It's such a loaded defensive line that they each help each other because they're so good. But Bosa is so strong, and yet he's so flexible. He made a move, I forget which game it was, but he kind of slithered in. And I thought, how did he kind of make himself so flexible that he could kind of weave his way into that little opening? Mm-hmm. But he did. I mean, he's just, you can tell he's obviously a very gifted guy physically, but he also works at his game. And Greg Schiano on the radio show today, kind of talked about that and said that he kind of lives being a defensive end. It just isn't a position he plays. It's kind of who he is. Okay.
How big do you think this game is? I guess what I mean is last year Ohio State lost the Oklahoma game. They didn't get in. The year before they won the Oklahoma game and did get in, even though they didn't win the Big Ten. Last year they won the Big Ten and didn't win it. It's a risk-reward kind of game because you risk playing a team, especially in a site that's a half hour from their campus, or maybe you could lose it. But at the same time, if you lose it, they're not necessarily dead. What do you make of a non-conference game like this between Ohio State and TCU?
If Ohio State loses, it's not the end of the world because of what you just said. I mean, they lost to Oklahoma, or they. One game is not going to eliminate you. It's the second loss. So if you lose this game, it eliminates the margin for error. If you win this game, then it does for Ohio State what Oklahoma did 2 years ago. It gives you an out. It gives you a margin for error. So if you go lose a conference game and you go on and win the conference tournament, or even if you don't, as we saw 2 years ago, you can still survive it and make the playoff. But it's a big game, I think, more for Ohio State's identity. They want to show that they are as good as they think they are. Because this is a team that lost a lot of pieces. Losing J.T. Barrett, losing Billy Price, losing all those defensive ends. There were some doubters. And I think that they want to show that they are legitimate national championship contenders, and this is the chance for them to show it. They're not going to show it against Rutgers or Oregon State, but they can show it Saturday night.
I would say that it's also a big game for the Big Ten because the league has,
right.
I don't know, Bill, it hasn't lived up to, I mean, it's only 2 weeks, but so far it hasn't lived up to the billing that, quite frankly, I even thought that they would live up to.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, Penn State going to the wire with Appalachian State, Michigan not playing well against Notre Dame, Michigan State losing in a game. I don't know why they scheduled a game in the desert in September, but they did.
Yep.
It's not been a great start for the Big Ten. Northwestern has looked awful. Purdue has looked awful.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think when it comes to strength of schedule, you look at some of these games, you figure if Ohio State beat Purdue in West Lafayette, that might actually be a nice thing on their resume. Now you go, well, they better beat them.
Yep.
So, yeah, I would say this would be a big win for the conference.
All right, Bill, safe travels down to Texas, and we'll see if you come out of there 3-0 in terms of watching Ohio State there. So thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Anytime, Matt.